welcome back to the Super Centex podcast, talking high school football here in Central Texas. Although Chad is not in Central Texas. You're out in West Texas, correct?
Exactly. I'm in Lubbock, right outside the Doubletree Hotel. I'm home away from home this fall.
There you go.
But I'm happy to talk Central Texas high school football.
There you go. And DJ is here in town, and you got a hoodie on? Is that what I see?
Yeah.
She
said I forgot to turn on my heater, and I didn't realize it was going to be 41 degrees when I woke up.
Yeah. It's cold. It's cold. Well, guys, if it's cold, that's fun because we're pretty deep into the season. We still have 4 teams left. We've made it to round 4, and we've got a Final Four here in Central Texas.
And we're in December.
For starting tomorrow as we record the podcast. So this week I want to talk about X factors, and you may define that however you wish, but if you would like a dictionary.com definition, here it is. A variable in a given situation that could have the most significant impact on the outcome. And I think that's that's probably
an algebraic reference.
Yeah, that's probably what we would say is an X factor. So I want you to give me an X factor, and it can be a person, it can be a phase of the game, or, just some aspect of the game for each of our 4 remaining teams. And let's start at the top in terms of classification that is left. And that would be the China Spring Cougars. So who or what will be the most important factor for China Spring as they play a top 5 game this week with Anna? And DJ, I'll start with you. You did see China last week.
Yeah. Well, I think they just have such a drive, I guess, to prove that they're still like the team that, I guess, not the team they were last year, but that they can still win despite losing what they lost last year. And, under a new head coach, even though he's been there before, so he knows the program, he knows what they have to do. I think it was pretty big for them to get Cash McCollum and to have people like Tristan Exline, Kyle Barton, and Trey Hafford on their offense, because it's just, they have options. Yeah. And I don't think we talk enough about their defense either. Like I can't name specific people because it's very much a group effort. But they were just shutting down Lake Worth every chance they got. Like every time they step on the field, they were holding it down. So no, they've got success in a lot of places, but I think just having the confidence that they've had this season has helped them a lot, especially with those kids in their offense and the way that their defense is played as well.
So it sounds like you're saying motivation maybe is their X factor.
Yeah,
I will say about the defense. So DJ's writing about Crawford's defense this week, but really all 4 of our remaining teams have great defenses. You don't get to this point of the season without that. And Terry Crawford and Abbott, even in the 6-man game, has really praised his defense this year. I mean, because teams just, they don't put those big numbers up on them. So yeah, China Spring's done a great job in that area. Chad, what would you say?
Yeah, I think as DJ went down the line and covered a lot of that stuff, it's the impression I get of China Spring is it's hard to identify what their weak link might be. And so, so you kind of have to go with an intangible, I think, with X factor. So, their motivation as a positive X factor, absolutely. I think maybe the X factor in this game for both teams is momentum, and that's, a fairly generic term, especially as we get this far along. But when you look at it, China Spring has come out and just whomped every team from the start in their playoff games, creating a huge amount of momentum early. Now, if they can't do that against Anna, Anna's kind of the Cinderella story in that region. And so the momentum is going to build on their side just by staying in the game, I feel like. So I think momentum is the X factor. If China Spring can come out and punch Anna in the mouth,
yeah,
sounds kind of fun.
That doesn't sound good, does it? We don't want to punch Anna.
So I'm going to call that X factor the Mike Tyson factor, and I'm going to use it again later.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh.
I was referencing Mike Tyson in terms of him being the author of the phrase "everybody has a plan until you punch him in the mouth."
I am going to name a person, and DJ did mention his name, but to me, Trey Hafford is a guy who's just a football player. Played a lot on defense last year in addition to offense. I don't know how much he's doing that this year. You guys would have a better clue of that, but he certainly is. I think as I've looked at the stats, his defensive stats haven't really been that big, but offensively as a receiver, he just feels like a matchup problem, that not a lot of teams can stay with that guy. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, and he makes plays, and he's done that really all year. So let's move down to Class 2A Division 1, where the Crawford Pirates continue to get it done. They beat Riesel 41-3 last week in that rematch of district rivals. So Crawford historically, going back to when Delbert Kelm was there, before Delbert Kelm, a long stretch, it was a man by the name of Robert Murphy as their head coach. Let me tell you, DJ, Chad and I could tell you some Robert Murphy stories. He's an interesting cat, to say the least. But Crawford has always been kind of about the team. They're always team, very focused on the team. They don't send in stats for Stats Plus. They do send in on Super Centex nominees. But so my question then is the X factor for Crawford, is it an individual or is it some other phase or aspect of the game? Crawford plays Tolar this week.
They've got individual guys that I feel are just incredible football players, just from the perspective of the level that they play at, the level of football that they play. I can't give you a name though to say that it's this one person that is the reason for all their success. Obviously, their defense is like the thing that we talk about the most, because it's they have a really great defense. I mean, up until when they played Marlin, they hadn't allowed more than like 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
That season, and then they've still been doing really great. I mean, I lost count of how many teams they shut down this season, like shut out, just did not allow a score. And but I think that's their X factor. It's that they are a team. Like they don't give to, it's easy for the small schools to just have that one guy that does everything for them. But I think the reason they're so good is that they have a lot of the kids are bought into the system of being a team.
Yeah, and I think that defense really works in concert with one another. I know I've talked to Jacobs this year some, and he would say that each guy really has to do their job, and the D line is getting that push, and the linebackers are kind of flying around and making plays, and Breck Chambers and those guys on the corner, in the secondary are guarding their man, and then they swarm to the ball too. I mean, it's a team tackling kind of mindset. And so, Chad, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say that's a great point by DJ, because I've covered a lot of 2A football. In fact, the majority of the games I've covered this year have been 2A, and you do see a lot of situations where, a quarterback, like Newt Shornack at Bosqueville will just kind of take over the game. And, Bosqueville Rosebud Lott, it was like quarterback versus quarterback, and which of the other teams could have a guy come in and make a difference. And that's why Crawford and Mart and some of our other 2As that went further went further, because they have multiple guys. Now, the X Factor guy I'm going to give you for the Crawford Tolar match is a name I have a story behind it, and it's not a Crawford player.
Okay.
It's Tolar running back, Peyton Smith. I think it's Peyton Smith. I can't really remember because the game I covered then was against Marlin, and the Marlin broadcaster decided that Peyton Smith reminded him of Peyton Hillis from Arkansas from a few years ago. So the entire game he referred to him as Peyton Hillis, right? So
no, I don't think it was Peyton Hillis.
No, but but that's the entire game that the classic Marlin broadcaster was just referring to this kid as Peyton Hillis unabashedly, and even though he knew that wasn't his name, right? But at any rate,
do a story on this Marlin broadcaster.
Oh, we have to next season.
I can't even tell you. Just sitting in the booth with him at in the Trojan Stadium during the first round, it was crazy. It was like me and I don't remember what publication this other writer that was sitting next to me was from, but we were just looking at each other during the game like, this is the most exciting game that we've heard all day. We weren't even paying attention to
it sounds like he's got a little Gus Johnson in him. Like, everything's awesome,
Well, no, but he also just he just fans it in a lot of ways, and he just kind of emotionally reacts in that way. But he knows it. He knows his stuff. My dad went with me and spotted for me at the Marlin Tolar game, and what really got him was the broadcast was so upset that Marlin had gone for it in the first quarter on fourth down, and in the second half they line up to go for it on fourth down, and he says, "Well, here they're going to run this so-called play." He was giving up on it before they even snapped the ball. So,
what were you going to say about Peyton Smith, though?
Peyton Smith, number 40 for Tolar, sophomore, but a big, fast running back, and they just pounded people with him. He had over 2,000 yards when they played. He had 2,000 yards for the season by the time they played Marlin 2 weeks ago. I'm sure he's up to in the neighborhood of 2,700 this year. So that Crawford defense, if they can hit him behind the line, which they're going to have to do because he gets going fast enough by the time he gets, a yard or two downfield, that he's really hard to stop, right? So he's the type of guy that they can produce a 15-play drive with, just because if you don't hit him at the line, he's going to get 3 or 4 yards, per play just by getting hit at the line and falling forward.
So Crawford has always been very ground oriented, going back again decades. That said, I do feel like they have a pretty good passer right now in Luke Torbert. I think that's an X factor. I know Steve Boggs covered a Crawford game earlier this year and was mentioning, out of the Crawford teams he'd seen, that he felt like, they were as proficient passing as he'd seen them. But I think DJ made an excellent point earlier. Even though they are all about the team, you can't do it without some good players. I mean, and like Chad, that 2004 Crawford State Championship team that you covered, they had good players. A couple years ago when they made their deep run, they had really good players. And so, I mean, they still have some hosses, like Breck Chambers, who's just kind of a do-it-all guy. And I think we'll have a chance to either kick or punt in college. And Crawford's never had a lot of college football signees. They're just not big kids. They're just tough 2A football players. But Cameron Walker is another one who's picking up offers from smaller schools, and is a ball player. That kid can play. So, I think if Breck and Cameron, those guys would be my 2 X factors if they can kind of show out, maybe along with Luke Torbert on the offensive side. All right, let's go down to Mart, the other 2A Division 2. So their Panthers are more used to playing on this stage than anyone in Central Texas. And if you had asked us before the season, we might have said that a lot of the Panthers X factors had graduated. Now it is Mart. They seem to find them. But here they are again, mauling everyone in their path. So what is the Mart X factor, or who?
Mart is also one of those teams that I feel like Crawford a bit, who, you know, is very much everybody's contributing. I mean, I could name people, Abram Ross, Monty Swainer, you know, those guys, they just, every time that I would get like nominations for player of the week, their numbers would be so low, but then you would look at the score and I'm just like, what's going on here? What happened here, right? I think their biggest thing is that they're hungry to prove themselves and to get back to what they expect Mart to be. Because they were obviously not satisfied with their result last year. And I think that was their biggest motivation coming into the season, is like, we're not what we're supposed to be if we can't win the state title, because it's Mart, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Chad?
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's kind of what I was going to say, is I think that their X factor is their chip on their shoulder. But also kind of off that point too, and you made it, is that I feel like maybe the kind of weird strength of this Mart team is you're not looking over your shoulder going, okay, this guy right here, he's the one that's going to make the difference for us, you know? And so, like, you're not relying on one guy. You're not anticipating one guy is going to make the play that gets it done for you. So, and those younger guys are having a chance to come up and be the guy. And the other thing is maybe they're harder to scout, because you're not saying, I'm drawing a blank and I'm not at my computer today, but you know, the big running back that ended up playing quarterback last year, it was so good for him.
Gosh. Yeah.
So we're all going to draw a blank at the same time.
I wasn't here last year.
DJ wasn't here. You're not going back to Rodrell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was 2 years ago. Was his last year, right?
Right. Rodrell
was
Rodrell Green, correct? Was that his last name, Chad?
Freeman?
Rodrell Freeman. Sorry, Rodrell Freeman.
Yeah.
It's terrible that we can't remember this, because he had a chance, and now it didn't happen, but to
win 4 rings.
To win 4 rings. He won 3 in a row, freshman, sophomore, junior, and then they were stopped his senior year. But what were you going to say about him?
Yeah, it was like, okay, well, you know, Rodrell Freeman's going to win this game for us, you know. Or, you know, a variety of medlocks last year or whatever. It's like
medlocks.
So, you know, the other team scouting them can't be like, well, we got to stop Rodrell first and foremost. We got to stop number 10. So I think that really kind of plays to their strength in a way.
Yeah. So in stand-up comedy, I'm going to explain a little bit about stand-up comedy to you guys. They have something called a callback, where, you know, they set up the joke, they make the joke, and then they tell some more jokes. And then kind of at the end of their set, they have the callback, and you're like, oh yeah, I recognize that joke from earlier. That it all comes together. So I'm going to do a callback here, and I'm going to say the X factor is something that DJ wrote about earlier in the dadgum year, which was their line play. Kevin Hoffman said, this is the best line he's had at Mart. And man, you know, we always say that's where football games are won. I think that's one of the reasons they're mauling people. Now, that's not to take anything away from any of their skill guys. I think Jonah Ross is a really good quarterback. I know Hoffman's high on him too. Just a sophomore, isn't he? I think he's just a sophomore. So they've got a bright future ahead with him. But I think, and DJ mentioned, and this has been a Mart thing for a while, but the low stats, right? Well, it's because they're up, 40-0 after a quarter, and Kevin Hoffman isn't a mean guy, and he's not going to beat a team 150-0. But I remember sometimes when he'd send in Super Centex nominations, and he'd almost be like apologetic, and he'd say, these guys are good. Like, I could have got Rodrell 3,000 yards if I wanted him. and while those stats are low, DJ, when you look at them, it's like 2 carries for 42 yards and 2 touchdowns, or 3 catches for 79 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, it's just like, good grief, these guys are efficient. So I think that line is a big deal. It creates huge holes, and those guys are fast, and they just go through them. So watch out for the line. And who is Mart playing again? Lovelady. Yeah. Okay. Jason Orts.
Unranked opponent, by the way, which is kind of strange for this time of year.
Yeah, it is. So Lovelady, good luck. And let's move down finally to the Abbott Panthers. They're playing in the 6-man state semifinals this week. Of course, 6-man plays 1 less game. They play 5 playoff games every other round. Every other division plays 6. If you're lucky, you get to play 6. So yeah, Abbott, if they win this week, they'll go to Jerry World. They'll have a week off before they do that. But like China Spring and Mart, Abbott is ranked number 1 in the state in their division, 1A Division 1. So give me your X factor for Terry Crawford's team. And this may be a little harder just because you guys haven't had the chance to cover Abbott in person yet. But they are playing their 3rd straight game, incidentally, against an unbeaten team this week in who are they playing? Gordon?
Irion County.
Yes, Irion County. Thank you. Irion County beat Jonesboro. Could have had Abbott versus Jonesboro, but was not to be.
And Jonesboro was a missed 2-point conversion away from.
Yes, they were. All right. So what, Chad, you're talking 6-man. What do you got on Abbott?
Well, I originally came up with that Mike Tyson factor with Abbott because up until last week, they had not been punched in the mouth, right?
Right.
But against Gordon, they won 32-24. And like you said, that's a defensive struggle in 6-man. That's like a 10-7 game in 11-man, right?
Yeah.
So they had that experience. Irion County had that experience against Jonesboro. So, they've both had a chance to react to that. And now, it kind of becomes who has been tested more throughout the season, right? Are you used to doing what you had to do last week? Because you're probably going to have to do it again, right? And then I guess another factor that you mentioned in the email, Bryce, and I'll just go ahead and steal this from you. Riley Sistala hasn't played the last game or a couple of games for them. He's been their go-to guy, and I'll let you mention the guy that's kind of stepped in for him. But so, yeah, I mean, it's just like that China Spring game, momentum. Who can create it faster?
Yeah, I believe I'm going to pronounce his name right, but Mason Hale. It's Hejl. Dad is one of the coaches there at Abbott. Coaches a variety of sports. If you coach at a 6-man school, you coach a variety of sports. But yeah, he has stepped in for Riley and put up big rushing numbers the last 2 weeks. Very Sistala-like rushing numbers, So you always hear about next man up. Well, next man up's a lot harder to do when you don't have that many men on your team to begin with. But I will say Abbott always does have, for a 6-man school, really good participation. Like their numbers a lot of times could rival some 2A schools' numbers. They usually have 20-something guys on their roster. That's depth in 6-man. And I think depth would be maybe my answer for the X factor for Abbott, because I feel like they've got a variety of guys that can make a play, like Carson Johnson or Brady Schultz or Mason Hale. I feel like, they've got it. And DJ was smiling there. I hope I didn't steal your answer.
You both did, so I have nothing to say now.
He says, check. Yeah. Well,
we let DJ make all the good points earlier. So
yeah, that's all right. That's good. Speaking of Czech, they're kind of in Czech country. Abbott, West, it's all kind of.
Wow, that's a reach.
That was
Is
a
that a
reach.
callback? Is that a stand-up?
That's a callback. I like it.
Now, I've got an idea. You're mentioning six man and sort of the depth factor in six man football. And man, those kids are so small. Like, I mean, just like an average to below average size kid, if you're at one of those six man schools, you're a football player, you know? Doesn't matter if you're 5'2", 110 pounds, you're a football player, right? So I think what we ought to do in photo day next summer is we ought to have like a feature where we take the 4 guys that, you know, a 6A school sends and the 4 guys that, you know, a 6-man school sends, and just have them introduce and stand side by side and just kind of look at just the visual of that, the physical nature of what it takes to be a 6A football player versus, you know, the all-comers sort of status of 6-man. And it sounds like you're trying to kind of belittling the 6-man guys, but when you think about it, you got to be pretty tough to be that small and go out and ram into somebody that might be a lot bigger than you every week.
No, I think that's a great point. I will say, when you do have one of those bigger guys in the 6-man level,
Right.
they can make an impact. And of course, the center is eligible to catch a pass in 6-man. Everybody's eligible, so that's fun. You know,
that's a rule that needs to translate to all of football.
I love it.
We can eliminate pass interference, and we eliminate illegal man downfield, and just be like, all right, have at it.
So DJ, I'm gonna guess. Tell me if I'm wrong. That when you cover the Abbott Panthers this weekend, it'll be your first 6-man game.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll drill you on some of the differences in the rules. We won't do that here, but I personally, I don't know where everyone else stands, but I love it. I love 6-man football. I think it's fun. And as Chad said, I think it gives kids that, you know, maybe just a normal athlete a chance to, you know, do something special. So, yeah, I hinted at it there, but DJ will be at the Abbott game on Saturday and the China Spring game on Friday. And then Chad, you're going to see the Crawford Tolar game, right?
That's right. Yep.
We'll have,
should be a good one.
Yeah, we'll have Jason Orts covering Mart for us. So we got it all covered. And looking forward to it. Should be a fun week.
Yeah, and by the way, Baylor's also playing Gonzaga in basketball on Friday night, right? So that's quite a night of sports.
Yes, and also, by the way, if Baylor volleyball wins Thursday, they'll play in the NCAA second round on Friday night. So, yes, we got a lot going on.
WacoTrib.com, because I'm not sure all that'll fit in the paper.
Check it out. All right, thanks, guys.
Sweet.